Hello and welcome to Shooting the Breeze, episode 14, the formal gun podcast of WaltInPA.com, and I am a very, very tired Walt White. Last week, during the podcast, I had mentioned that I had some damage due to a freak snowstorm that hit a couple of days before Halloween. And, I showed you lots of pictures of the damage and the trees that were down, or not so much the damage. My yard was a mess, but the trees didn't hit anything important. They just hit the ground and made a tremendous mess. Well, since those trees have been down, I've been spending practically every night out in the yard with the chainsaw and lugging either tree limbs or pieces of tree trunk down to the sidewalk so that I can have a friend of mine come pick it up. And it's just been a very, very long week. And finally today, there was a series of events that took place, and I thought, well, I'm finally going to get a break. I'll be able to get this podcast done nice and early. And just for the hell of it, I guess I'll tell you a little bit about that. So, over the weekend, my wife gets a text message from a friend of hers, who just happens to be our babysitter, saying that she wasn't able to watch my daughter today. So my wife gets in touch with her mother and makes arrangements for my mother-in-law to watch my daughter. And I always like it when my mother-in-law watches my daughter because I don't need to go directly from work and pick up my daughter. There's always a lull in there where I can get some errands done or things like that. And the plan today was after work I would come home and immediately get into the podcast so that by the time I get finished with the podcast and got all the random stuff buttoned up associated with the podcast, my wife would be getting home after having stopped down at her parents' house and picked up my daughter. We could have dinner together as a family, hang out and play and things like that. But when I pulled up after work, I see a municipal truck a couple of houses down the street, and they just finished cleaning up some branches from in front of my neighbor's house. Now, up until that very moment, I had no idea what everyone was doing putting tree branches out in front of their house. While my municipality does have chipping and that they make mulch out of this stuff, but they never pick it up. You always have to take it to the township building, and I wasn't quite sure why random people were dragging this stuff out to the street. So I get out of my car and I'm getting stuff set up beside my car. I got random stuff I have to drag up to the house for working from home, and I was pulling the mail out of my mailbox when the township truck comes down the street, stops, and the guy gets out of the car and kind of walks up to me with this look on his face like, I have to tell you something, but I really don't want to have to tell you something, or I really don't want to have to tell you what I'm going to tell you. And he comes over with this kind of look on his face and he goes, "Hey man, do you have any way of getting rid of that stuff?" And he points over to the tree trunks and logs and big stuff that I've been bringing down and leaving by the street. And so I tell him, yeah, no big deal. I've got a friend coming. You don't have to take that or anything. He says, well, good. But, I just wanted to let you know that tomorrow is the last day for cleanup. So if you have any branches and stuff like that, you need to get them down to the street. And, I'll be happy to pick them up for you. I just wanted to let you know I couldn't take the big stuff. So I'm like, oh, okay, no big deal. And then from that very moment up until it was too dark to see, I'm lugging big pieces of tree, branches, limbs, anything that was, too small to burn. I'm like cutting it up partially and dragging it a couple of 100 feet from my backyard to the street, and I spent all day doing that, or 3 hours, 4 hours maybe, until it got dark, in which case it was just too dark to deal with anything, and I came in the house, got cleaned up, had dinner, and my whole plan fell apart, and here we are recording the podcast a little bit later than I typically like to. But now you have a little understanding of kind of why I'm in the mood that I'm in, and why I may be a bit kind of run down and tired as I talk. But even with that said, I've got a lot of stuff to talk about on this particular episode. There was so much information actually that I had to prune some of it back out of my show notes. Just more interesting things were taking precedence. So I pushed out some of the less interesting stuff, and I've got what I think is a pretty good show. But before we get started on, the news and featured content and things like that, I want to get back into doing these sort of random discussion topics at the beginning of the show. They just kind of fit there, and I really like the way the show flows with the random stuff at the head of the show, or at the start of the show. So with that said, let's talk about some random stuff. The first being my everyday carry knife wrap-up. It's been, I think it's been 4 episodes now that I've been carrying around a Spyderco Delica 4, courtesy of Cajun Blaze, and it's about time to swap it out for another knife. And I'll tell you more about the knife I'm going to be swapping it out with in just a second. But excuse me, just to recap, a few weeks ago, or several weeks ago, Cajun Blaze was really kind and sent me a handful of knives that I could carry on my person every day as an everyday carry knife. Now, right before he sent them, I was talking about this knife meme that I participated in, and I started talking about my Xikar 744 that I have since lost, and I'm still a bit heartbroken over, but I start talking about this knife and the pros and cons and how I would like to upgrade to something more substantial and something that wasn't classified as a quote gentleman's tool unquote, and something that could take a little bit of a beating. And I was looking at Spyderco knives, and actually I was looking at the Delica first due to the size. While I really liked what I think was the Endura 4. It seemed a bit big, and the Xikar knife that I was carrying was even smaller than this. So Cajun Blaze got some knives together of this particular, of around this size, and sent them to me and told me, carry them around and determine what you like, and, kind of go from there. This way you get a feeling for what you're shopping for and what you're looking at. And, I thought that was fantastic. I still really appreciate that. And it's been, I don't know, 4 or 5, maybe 6 weeks that I've been carrying around the Spyderco Delica 4, and I thought I would talk about it a little bit and just sort of give you a grand opinion from start to finish. Now, this particular knife has some sort of plastic polymer resin sort of handle. Now, inside there appears to be a little bit a very thin liner for the blade. So the handle itself is pretty rigid. It's nice because it's lightweight. It's got, I don't want to call it checkering, but it's got a pattern cut out in the handle of the knife itself, which acts as a pretty good surface to really bite and grip with. It doesn't slip out of the hand. I've had no problems with the knife slipping as I'm cutting. All of these Spyderco knives seem to have this big giant hole in the blade that I thought was kind of weird at first, but now I absolutely love it for a quick opening of the knife. The blade is VG10 steel, and it's got serrations on the back side for a thumb. It's got sort of finger grooves to fit the hand well, and you can choke up on the blade, and it cuts and handles pretty well. The action is nice and smooth, and all in all, it's just been a fantastic knife. It can be carried in a variety of ways, tip up, tip down. You just simply pop out what looks like small Allen screws out of the belt clip, and you can move it into 4 locations, here, and on the opposite side, top and bottom. Now, I'm not really a knife guy, so I'm stumbling over what to say, and I don't really know the identifying parts of the knife and things like that. I just kind of want to talk about it and my experiences with it. And all in all, this thing has been awesome. When I first got this knife, I got this knife, a buck knife, and the Spyderco Native 4. I believe it's a Native 4. Or natural, I can't think, natural or native. I think it's a Native 4. But when I initially got these knives, the other Spyderco was my absolute favorite. I fell in love with that thing immediately and couldn't wait to start carrying it. And the Spyderco Delica 4 was my second favorite knife in the bunch. But I started carrying it because it was the knife I was window shopping for. And I'm kind of sad to give it up at this point, because even though I haven't really given this a ton of hard use, it has just suited me really, really well, and it has never stopped impressing me. Every time I need to use the knife, it just works. No matter how grimy or gritty I get it when I'm out working in the yard and I've got tree sap and wood chips from the chainsaw and just all kinds of nasty, gross, dirty snow, mud, caked things that get stuck inside this knife from being carried in my pocket, me rolling around in all this crap. It cleans up nice, and it just continues to work, and it's still relatively sharp. I mean, it could be touched up a bit, but again, you know, this knife has just been fantastic. Had I bought this knife, I would not be disappointed in the slightest bit. It is just one awesome, awesome knife. I'm very, very happy to have used it for these several weeks, and would definitely add this back into my rotation after I get done going through all the other knives. Now, the second knife that I'm going to be carrying is the other Spyderco knife that Cajun Blaze sent me, which is I believe it's a Native 4. Now, it's a bit heavier in the hand. The blade is shaped a bit differently, and it's kind of built so that you can really choke up on the knife. And it seems to be more of a what is the word I'm looking for? It seems to be geared towards more fine-tuned cutting and things like that. So it's one badass looking knife. I can't wait to start carrying it. But it definitely feels different than the Delica 4. So as I carry this from week to week, I'll be stopping in and doing these little updates like I did with the Spyderco, with the Delica 4. And you know, I'll just let you know what I think of it along the way. So that more or less is going to wrap up the random part of the show, I believe. Actually, no, I got one more other thing I wanted to talk about. And that is a new gun show that I happened to see a trailer for. And I really don't remember where I saw it. I was bouncing around on Google Reader a few days ago, and I saw this YouTube video for a trailer for this new gun show called Hot Shots. And it's going to be on Versus, which is now going to be NBC Sports, and I believe it's going to start airing in January. The trailer is pretty cool. I really don't know what to expect of the show. You know, they show you who's going to be on the show. They show you a little bit of what's going to be on the show, but they really don't get in depth as to what to expect. I kind of get the feeling that it's kind of like Tap Out, if you've ever seen episodes of that, or I mean, I haven't seen a lot of it, but what I have seen has been really cool, where these promoters kind of go behind the scenes with up-and-coming fighters. Only in Hot Shots, it is the top-tier shooters that they're featuring. But from the looks of it, they give you a look inside their home life, how they prepare for matches, how they practice, you know, just different things. And it looks like a pretty cool show, but, you know, I'm not going to say it looks like the most awesome thing ever, because I thought the same thing when Three Gun Nation, when I started seeing shows for Three Gun Nation, and then by about the third or fourth episode, I was just kind of getting tired of it. It was kind of the same thing over and over again, it seemed. So I have really high hopes for the show. I can't wait to check it out, and hopefully they release some more video between now and January so that we can get a better understanding of what the show is all about. So that's what I've got for the random portion of the episode, which is kind of really off the wall and has nothing to do with the rest of the show, but that part is out of the way, so I will be right back. We'll get started with the news, and we'll get this show on the road, or get this show rolling, or however we want to say it this time around. I am definitely not re-recording this whole 14 minutes of babbling just because I botched the end. Alright, it is time for the news. Last week, after episode 13 aired, I got a suggestion to do sort of a recap of the news rather than read the entire article. Now, while I do want to kind of do that, I'm not going to do that this particular episode, because I didn't really get a chance to read these over enough times, because there has been such an influx of different stuff this week. I didn't read the article a number of times like I usually do to get a really good firm grasp of what was inside there, so that I could do a recap and things like that. Some of these I've only read through once and thought they were interesting. So with that said, I'm going to read the entire article, and maybe in future episodes I'll just do a recap. I'll tell you about a news story, I'll give you my synopsis of it, and then we'll kind of talk about it and then move on. But in this week, the first piece of news comes from the Oregon Firearms Federation, and it was published on November 2nd, and it is entitled, "Newburgh School District Tells Legislator They Plan to Continue Breaking the Law." It's relatively short, but it's pretty interesting. And it goes on to say, the Newburgh, Oregon School District is setting an interesting example for children it is educating. Educating is in quotes. That lesson is, if you don't like the law, ignore it. In spite of the fact that the appeals court has ruled in no uncertain terms that schools cannot create or impose their own rules dealing with firearms, Newburgh School District Superintendent Paula Radich has made it clear that she intends to do just that. When informed that the district's policy on firearms possession was illegal, Radich wrote a district resident, quote, "After considerable research and thought regarding your request to change board policy KG and administrative regulations KG through AR, in the interest of protecting the safety and well-being of the children in our care, I will not be recommending a policy change to the board of directors. Thank you for your input." End quote. When contacted by House Rep. Kim Thatcher and reminded that the Oregon University system squandered almost $50,000 in taxpayer funds in a failed attempt to defend their unlawful gun policies, in spite of having been repeatedly warned that they were illegal, Radich responded, quote, "Thank you for writing me. I have read both court cases and have discussed this matter with our board of directors. At this time, I am not recommending a change in board policy," end quote. In other words, the law means nothing to us. This is an interesting situation given that not a legislative session goes by without the public school establishment demanding huge increases in their funding. The district superintendent is handed a very well-publicized court decision saying that she is breaking the law, she is reminded of how costly these policies can be, and she chooses to simply ignore the facts of the law. And these people are teaching Oregon children. Clearly, the law must be changed so that bureaucrats who flagrantly ignore or break the law can no longer flush away precious taxpayer money. They must be held accountable themselves. Given the current makeup of the Oregon Senate, any change of that kind will be an uphill climb. But if you would like to share your thoughts with the superintendent, you can contact her as follows, and then there's her information. And then there's actually a sample message you can copy and paste and send in, which basically just says, hey, look, you're breaking the law. How dare you teach this teach this mindset to children that if you don't like the law, you can simply ignore it. I'm just kind of paraphrasing there and recapping it in my own words, but it's interesting in the sense that we've got an educator who is, I guess she's a superintendent. She's not really an educator, but she's in charge of the people that educate the youth, the children, or the university students, whomever. She's in charge of education in her school district, and because she doesn't like the law, she decides to just simply ignore it, which is it's incredible that she can get away with that. There was that recent law passed in Florida where anytime a mayor or municipality or whomever decided to go against state law and make their own rules, that there were going to be repercussions for that. And I think the same thing should apply here. Although it sounds like that's not going to happen based on Oregon politics, but it's kind of a slap in the face. I think that when told pretty clearly that she's violating the law and this is going to cost taxpayer money, she simply just kind of shrugs it off and says, I'm going to do what I want to anyway. And I think she needs to be out of there, and someone with a more level head needs to be in her position. I mean, it's nice to have morals and stand your ground and do what you think is right, but in this case, it's not just it's not just affecting her, it's affecting taxpayers, and it's essentially costing them money if this whole thing goes to court over and over and over again, because she simply chooses to ignore a law or a policy. So it's pretty interesting, and I don't like what she's doing, but if you don't like it and you live in Oregon, click on the link, copy and paste the little sample letter, and fire it off and see what she says to you, or if you get a response at all. So that is news item number 1. All right, for news item number 2, we have something from a CBS affiliate, 7 on Your Side, which covers Spartanburg, Greenville, Anderson, South Carolina, and Asheville, North Carolina. And it is entitled, Local Sheriff's Comments Renew Gun Debate. And this was published also on November 2nd. And it goes on to say, Spartanburg, South Carolina. Sunday's attempted rape at Milliken Park in Spartanburg has reignited local debate on guns and put the upstate in the national spotlight after comments by Spartanburg County Sheriff Chuck Wright. CNN and other cable news programs had Sheriff Wright as a guest. I heard him this morning on Charlotte talk radio station WBT. He elaborated on comments he made on Monday's news conference where he announced the Milliken Park suspect's arrest and gave advice to women on how to protect themselves. Quote, I don't want you to go for the mace. I want you to go for the concealed weapons permit, end quote, said Wright at Monday's newspaper. As we reported Tuesday, the sheriff's message has resonated with women tired of being afraid. There's been a spike in business at local firearms dealers. Women are coming in to purchase guns and learn to use them in concealed weapons permit classes. David Blanton runs Top Gun Shooting in Boiling Springs, South Carolina. Tuesday, he told 7 on Your Side, personally, over the last 16 hours, I've had 16 women that have signed up to come through the class over the next 2 weeks. These ladies are taking the stance of they would rather be proactive and able to defend themselves than be reactive at the hospital trying to figure out how they're not going to allow this to happen again. Lynn Hawkins of Safe Homes Rape Crisis Coalition had this reaction to women arming themselves. It feels like vigilante justice. I think that people need to be encouraged to find other ways to protect themselves. I think there are other ways to prevent violence, and I think education and prevention is what we need to be focusing on. Sheriff Wright said on CNN that he's not encouraging vigilantes. My personal opinion, I don't disagree with Ms. Hawkins. In the big picture, education and prevention can be effective. I recommend that you follow this link and read this item. It outlines the rapist's perspective on choosing a victim. After reading it, you may find changing some of your habits in order. And then there's a link. And it goes on to say, but a situation like that faced by Sunday's victim at Milliken Park requires quick action and clear thinking. The victim is alone with a criminal who is bent on harming them. Unless they have been trained in martial arts or some form of self-defense, many women lack physical strength or skill to fend off the male attacker. The Milliken Park attacker also reportedly threatened to shoot the victim, although the victim doesn't remember seeing a gun. Victims need a way to turn the tables. Blanton tells 7 on Your Side, I think the more women go out and get guns, the more criminals get to figuring out, hey, this lady over here might be packing heat. He may think twice about what he's doing. In these days and times, I don't blame any woman or man for choosing to arm themselves. However, I am also an advocate of proper training and certification. All gun owners need confidence and proficiency to use their great power in the right situations and to the right extent. A Gallup poll finds gun ownership in America is at an all-time high. The poll says 47% of adults have a gun either in their home or somewhere on their property. 43% of women have a gun, according to Gallup. That's also a new high. But a gun is only one way of defending yourself. Check with your local police for self-defense classes, or at the very least, Google protecting yourself from rapists and read the information. There are also ways to avoid dangerous situations. In other words, start by avoiding places and circumstances where you would be vulnerable. Preparedness and awareness can be a mighty weapon too. So, kind of a neutral article. Well, I guess it's probably sways more towards pro-gun than not. But I was really kind of bothered by the the woman's remark on this Lynn Hawkins from the Safe Homes Rape Crisis Coalition, I was kind of bothered by her reaction, saying that it feels like vigilante justice. I think that people need to be encouraged to find other ways to protect themselves. I think there are other ways to prevent violence, and I think education and prevention is what we need to be focusing on. So, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, there's a woman who's walking through a park and she encounters a rapist. This woman is saying, well, there are better ways. I mean, in that dire situation, I mean, pull out the gun and use it. I mean, I just don't understand how someone, especially a woman who may find herself in a similar situation, can say that, this isn't right. You should find another way to protect yourself. And then later on in the article, there's a link to how there's a link to determine how a rapist may potentially choose their victim. I mean, now you're telling people that they should sort of bend to the whim of the rapist. You should avoid doing certain things in your life because there might be a rapist creeping around behind the bush. It just seems when all the terrorist stuff happened here with 9/11, and we began changing the way we live our lives, and people started getting up in arms saying, the terrorists have won. They've made us change who we are, in fear of being attacked. And I think this is a similar situation where we don't want you shooting the bad guy to protect yourself. We just want you to do things differently with your day-to-day life. We want you to give up certain liberties so that you're not a target. Granted, it's not as large, it's not, I guess it's not a fair comparison. It's not apples to apples, but I really don't like the way that this Lynn Hawkins is viewing the situation. I think that any woman put in that position is well within her rights to pull a gun off her hip, out of a holster, out of her purse, out of a fanny pack, out of whatever, and shoot the would-be rapist, or shoot the person that is trying to harm her, and that should be the end of the discussion. That it's just, I don't know, that the information in this news article was interesting, but the Lynn Hawkins stuff kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I really didn't like it. But there is your news article number 2, and I think I've babbled on enough for this particular news item, so let's move on to the last one. Alright, for the last piece of news, I have something from Opposing Views, and it is entitled "Gun Haters Misleading People on Concealed Carry." Now, this was submitted to this website by Gun Owners of America on October 25th. And, there's not a whole lot to say about this article. It's just kind of a nice little clear the air kind of a read. So I'm just going to go through and read it, and there's probably not going to be much to add on the end of it. So it goes on to say, on November 1st, when Wisconsin became the 49th state to recognize the rights of its citizens to carry firearms. Now, only one state remains in the dark ages, that being the state of Illinois. As can be imagined, the anti-gun media is predicting that letting citizens carry firearms will result in carnage in the streets, shootouts in bars, and angry parents settling scores on the ball field with their firearms. And to supposedly prove their point, they cite a bogus report of the Violence Policy Center, VPC, entitled "Concealed Carry Killers." The faux report says that since May 2007, at least 300 people, including 11 law enforcement officers, have been killed by private citizens legally allowed to carry handguns in killings not ruled self-defense. But according to an analysis found on pajamasmedia.com, less than half of the deaths which were attributed to concealed carry holders by the VPC were actually committed by a permit holder drawing and firing his or her concealed weapon. Less than half? Yes, that was the figure as of December 2009. Sadly, VPC's reporting has not gotten any better in the following 2 years. After all, the VPC double counts victims or considers self-defense killings as murder, uses non-gun deaths like strangulation to inflate concealed carry killings, and adds accidental killings to its totals. Such is the case where an errant shot was fired at a robber. More startlingly, More startlingly, VPC counts non-permits holders who, in some cases, were even prohibited by law from carrying a firearm. A notable case on their website is Jared Lauer, who shot Arizona Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords, injuring her and killing 6 people. The VPC claims that because of Arizona's new law, which allows law-abiding citizens to carry concealed handguns without a permit, Lauer was able to legally carry his pistol to Giffords' event in his assassination attempt. But what VPC misses is that this right applies only to law-abiding citizens. Sections 13-3102 of Arizona law specifically prohibits and disallows the concealed carry of a handgun with the intent to commit a crime. Jared Lauer was most certainly not able to legally carry his pistol to commit the crimes he perpetrated in January 2011, as the VPC claims. The VPC wants to focus on a few bad apples in the concealed carry community and suggests that citizens can't be trusted to carry firearms. But using their own logic, they should be arguing for cop disarmament because they break the law far more often. Gun Owners of America recently posted a fact sheet on its website comparing crime rates between concealed carry permit holders and the police. As compared to those who carry concealed, the average American is almost 8 times more likely to be convicted of crimes and over 40 times more likely to be convicted of burglary. And police officers are almost 800 times more likely to violate the law. There are an estimated 6 million citizens who possess a concealed carry permit. The number of legal concealed carriers is probably higher considering the growing number of states that recognize the right of their citizens to carry without a permit. Press reports indicate that concealed carry is at an all-time high, even while crime rates have been dropping in the United States for over the past few years. Yet we've been hearing the Chicken Little cries of doom and gloom as far back as the mid-1980s, when Florida kicked off the modern concealed carry movement with the enactment of its shall issue law. Prior to its passage in 1987, there was a vigorous debate in the Florida legislature. Opponents of the law claimed that carry law would turn this sunshine state into the gunshine state. It was a cute jingle, but the dire predictions never materialized. Murder rates started dropping immediately after the passage of the law, prompting one of the chief opponents, Rep. Ron Silver, to admit that he had been wrong about concealed carry. Such was the case in Texas as well. One of the chief opponents in the Lone Star State was Senior Corporal Glenn White, who was president of the Dallas Police Association. White lobbied against the law in 1993 and 1995 because he thought it would lead to wholesale armed conflict. Senior Corporal White admits that all the horror stories I thought would come true, or that I thought would come to pass, didn't happen. No boogeymen. I think it's worked out well, and says good things about the citizens who have permits. I'm a convert. It takes guts to look at the evidence and admit you were mistaken. Kudos to Rep. Silver and Senior Corporal White for being man enough to admit they were wrong. Who knows, maybe the VPC will own up and admit they were also wrong about the fear and paranoia they've peddled in their faux report. But then again, don't hold your breath. So, an interesting little set the story straight article from Gun Owners of America, and there's really nothing to say. Just a good, solid, informative article. Alright, well, it is time for featured content, and basically this is the part of the show where I just go through Google Reader and I just pick out stuff that I find interesting, whether it be a blog, a podcast episode, a video, just something I see across the web that I find interesting. I take it, I talk about it, and then I urge you to go check it out for yourself. Now, in the first piece of featured content that I have for you is episode 47 of the Power Factor Show, entitled Polymer Guns. Now, the Power Factor Show is a video podcast which is geared towards competitive shooting. They talk a lot about competitive shooting, and they kind of give you not so much inside information, but they educate you on the sport and things about, Bianchi Cup or IDPA or USPSA, things like that. And in this particular episode, Rick and Caleb go over some of the polymer guns that are commonly used throughout these sports, be it, Bianchi Cup, Steel Challenge, USPSA, IDPA. And this episode was pretty interesting. It's about a half an hour long, and they go through a variety of guns. The bulk of the time is spent on Glock pistols and XDM. I was kind of disappointed that we didn't see any footage of the Smith & Wesson M&P. It was touched on, but I really wish they would have spent as much time on that pistol as they did the variety of Glocks and that XDM. Because being an M&P shooter, I was hoping to see more information instead of quick information that was provided. But if you're a Glock guy or an XDM guy, there's lots of information here on the variety of uses and barrel swaps and equipment swaps and things like that available for Glocks. And there was a handful of information on the XDM, all of which I found was interesting. Definitely worth taking half an hour out of your day and watching episode 47 of the Power Factor Show on polymer guns. Alright, for the second piece of featured content, I have a post from Shall Not Be Questioned, which is formerly Snowflakes in Hell. And this particular piece comes from Sebastian. I've been following Sebastian's Snowflakes in Hell blog for a long time, and I've always found it to be very active and very informative. And there was something that popped up on Google Reader today, and it actually bumped something else that I was planning on featuring because it triggered an emotion, and I was kind of agitated by it. Now, this particular article stems around advice columns. You ever heard of like Dear Abby or Dear Amy, things like that, where you submit a question and then the person, the fictional character, or whoever it might be, formulates an opinion and gives you advice. It's basically an advice column. So this one article is entitled Dear Amy. Now, this woman submits a question to an advice column over the Minneapolis Star-Tribune. And basically she says, my niece's husband is a gun nut. He carries his gun everywhere he goes. He's got a permit. But, I don't want it in my house. What do I do? And the advice goes on to say something along the lines of, well, I took your question and I submitted it to the Brady campaign for an answer. And as soon as I heard that, I just kind of lost all faith in it, and I knew it was going to go downhill from there. And basically, it's just regurgitated information from the Brady campaign on how dangerous this person is because he's carrying a gun. There's something like 43% chance of injuring someone in the home that's not an attacker or things like that. And it was just kind of bogus information. It really agitated me because I would have liked to have seen a more neutral stance. If you're going to get information from the Brady campaign, maybe you should go to the other side of the line too, because Brady is very anti-gun, and I knew that was where the article was headed as soon as she mentioned Brady campaign, and this is what they said. So, kind of agitated, and fortunately, in the comments, actually, if you go to the blog that I'm talking about and click through to read the entire question and answer and look at the comments that followed, some people had a level head on their shoulders and said, hey, look, if you're going to give information from one side, you should give it from the other, and here are some information from Gun Facts disputing these bogus statistics that the Brady campaign is using to further their agenda. So it was kind of agitating, but the comments made me feel a little bit better. So head over to Shall Not Be Questioned and check out the Dear Amy write-up, and look at all the variety of comments that go along with it. And then click through and check out the article on the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, and just take in all this stuff. It's mildly interesting and kind of agitating. For the last piece of featured topic, or for the last featured topic of the episode, I have a continuation of the Emily Miller Gets Her Gun saga, which, if you've been following along on the Washington Times website, Emily is a Washington D.C. resident who is trying to get a gun and use it to protect herself around her home and things like that. And And basically, these stories are a step-by-step process of what she's encountering as she's attempting to get her gun. This particular one is entitled Washington's Unsafe Gun Safety Class. And it's kind of interesting because what wound up happening was when she went down to the office to get all the information to get her gun, she was handed just a stack of paperwork. And one of the stipulations was that she had to take a gun safety class, I guess to familiarize herself with the lethal weapon that she would be having in her home. And basically, it was just a list of names on a piece of paper, and there were a bunch of them. No additional information was given. No, there was no credentials or anything like that. So she's feeling, she's kind of nervous about the prospect of calling someone up, making an appointment, and then going unarmed to visit this stranger who is armed in an unfamiliar place. And she sees that as being a scary situation. And I guess I could see this, but I guess I wouldn't be as uneasy, being that the name was given to me by the police department. But it outlines her situation and the process of scheduling a class and going and getting Washington D.C. police certified instruction on handling a weapon, and I believe there's something like 3 or 4 hours of classroom time and 1 hour of hands-on shooting and things like that. So it's an interesting read. I've been following it along as best I can, and I'm also following along on Twitter to see how this whole thing works out. And this is definitely worth the read. So click the link and check out Emily Gets Her Gun and the gun safety portion of the saga. I guess you would call it a saga. Well, it is time for the cigar and drink pairing portion of the episode, one of my favorite parts of the show, where I get to talk a little bit about the cigar that I'm smoking and try to pair it up with a beverage. And in this case, it is the same beverage that I've had in the past. I guess this is the 4th show in a row that I've had this breakfast blend Caribou coffee. Now, if you're just watching this for the first time, basically what happened was my wife bought this ginormous pack of K-Cups thinking that it was a variety pack, and she wound up with 80 K-Cups of the same kind. Now, we've been trying to get through this box of K-Cups for I guess about a month now, and it's kind of like the Gremlins, they just keep making more, and every time you look in the box there seems to be more than the day before. So I don't know how much longer I'm going to be drinking this coffee, but it actually works out. Throughout all of this this tree cleanup that I've been doing, I pulled something in my back, and my doctor's got me on muscle relaxers to control a spasm that I'm having. And I don't want to add alcohol on top of that, and I'm taking ibuprofen, and just dumping alcohol on top of medication isn't something that I like to do. So I've been sticking with softer beverages this week, and I just felt like doing coffee with the Oscuro that I'm smoking. Now, the cigar is pretty interesting. This is the Humo Jaguar from Miami Cigar Company. Now, this particular cigar came to be due to this big cigar festival that goes on in Honduras every year. And they have the Humo Jaguar, which is kind of like a blending competition where all of these different cigar manufacturers submit a cigar, and all of these cigars are judged, and one is awarded, the Humo Jaguar Award of the Year. And this one, for 2011, comes from Miami Cigar Company. Looking at the makeup of this cigar, it appears as though all Honduran tobacco is used. There's Honduran filler, there's a Honduran binder, I believe it's from Talanga. There is an Oscuro Honduran wrapper, and it's available in a couple of sizes, I think 3. There's a Robusto, which is a 5x52, a Corona Gorda, which is a 6x52, and this massive thing, which is a Gigante at 6x60. Now, I got these samples from Miami Cigar Company shortly after the IPCPR trade show. Because I wasn't able to make it, a handful of cigar companies were awesome and sent me some samples so that I could see exactly what came out this year. And among those samples from Miami Cigar was 2 of these Humo Jaguars. Now, I smoked the first one, and I really don't remember too much about it. And I'm almost going into this one blind. Maybe I only got the one, but I decided to smoke it tonight because it's a big giant cigar. It's Oscuro, and I felt like having coffee. And Oscuro, Maduro, and coffee, they just go really, really well together. So this cigar is medium-bodied, medium to full flavored. It's easy on the palate. It's smoking pretty well. Every now and again, I get a really airy puff, and there isn't a whole lot of smoke volume, but I would say maybe 75% of the puffs are really dense, and they coat the palate well, easy to get through the sinus, you know, all that good stuff. The cigar is burning pretty well. It's got a nice light colored ash. It's holding a nice compacted shape. It's been nice and neat from start to finish. It has taken a couple of touch-ups. Again, I think it's probably because of that airy draw every now and again. But as far as the flavor profile goes, I'm getting some rich coffee notes. I don't know whether that's the cigar or the coffee that I'm drinking. There's some bitter chocolate flavors. There's a little bit of woody flavor, and there's a bit of spice through the sinus. So when you mix all that together, it makes for a pretty decent cigar. It's got a nice creamy texture. It lingers on the palate for a little while. The lingering flavor is kind of bitter, and I just kind of like it. It reminds me of like a hoppy beer, or not overly hoppy, but it's got a nice sort of hoppy kind of bite to it. So all in all, good solid cigar. If you're interested in trying these cigars, my preferred retailer, Buckhead Cigar in Atlanta, Georgia, just happens to have them on sale. I was browsing AskTheCigarGuys.com looking for something that I could feature, and sure enough, Mike had something that I just happen to have. Now, this particular cigar, the Gigante, goes for $48.95 a 5-pack or $171.95 for a box. Both of those prices include free shipping, and if you're interested in ordering these cigars, you can pick up the phone and give Mike a call at 404-844-0400. I'm sure Mike will be happy to pack you up a 5-pack, a box, or anything in between, and get those out to you in the mail. So you can also look at AskTheCigarGuys.com to see what Mike has on sale, or if you're interested in different sizes of this particular cigar, he also has pricing and information on the other sizes. And if you just want to chat and see what he's got and talk to him, you can do that on Twitter at @BuckheadCigar. So with that said, Mike is my preferred retailer. That is the cigar and drink pairing of the episode. So now it's time to roll on into the featured topic of the episode and close this thing out. All right, for the featured discussion topic of the episode, I want to talk about a local USPSA match that I shot this past Saturday. I shot the match at Lower Providence Ride and Gun Club in Audubon, Pennsylvania, and it was the second time I shot a match at this club, and I find that I really enjoy how they set up their matches. The match director does a great job of mixing medium and short distance shots in with a lot of angles. So when you address a lot of these stages at Lower Providence, you need to you almost need to find a position in the field of fire where you can see a variety of targets and then engage them. It's not a matter of hearing the buzzer and then just taking off and hosing targets as you get close to them. You'll find that targets are only visible from certain positions, which makes for a really interesting game plan. And I want to play for you the video footage that I shot of the match and sort of add a little bit of commentary, tell you how I addressed the stage, how I, some of the mistakes that I made, some of the mistakes that I see, how I would address the stage differently if I were to shoot the same thing all over again. And that's more or less going to be the discussion topic, just because I had a hell of a time at the match, and I just want to talk about it as much as possible. So, with that said, let's take a look at stage 1.
Stand by. Top up to the next stage. 1042.
All right, for this stage, we started out with a loaded pistol on a table directly in front of us. At the buzzer, you pick up the pistol and you engage 3 targets, 2 shots each, as you see them. Now, my original game plan was to pick up the gun, press out, and fire 2 shots as quickly as possible at the center target, which was directly in front of me. Now, I couldn't fire too fast because there were 2 no-shoot targets on either side of it, covering a portion of the target, so I didn't want to hit those and be penalized. And then from there, I was going to go left and fire 2 shots at the longer distance target, sort of shrouded by barrels, and then move far right and engage the last target at about the same distance, and shrouded by another set of barrels. But what I wound up doing was changing my game plan, picking up the pistol and shooting far left, running to the edge of the firing box, firing 2 shots, and then moving to the center. Now, looking back at the footage, instead of moving to the center and firing those 2 shots, I should have fired the 2 shots on an angle at that center target, because it was within plain view. I could have hit it, and then I wouldn't have had to start running, stop, aim, fire, and then stop and move again, and move again and stop. So what I wound up doing was breaking far left, firing 2 shots, moving, stopping, shooting, moving, stopping, shooting. And again, I should have broke far left, fired 2 shots, immediately fired 2 more shots, and then ran to the far end of the firing line and fired 2 more shots. My scores weren't too bad. I don't remember how I made out on that stage, but I think I could have shaved some time off of it by engaging it in the way that I should have, or I said I should have, rather than the way I did. So with that said, let's take a look at the second stage of the day.
Stand by. Okay, just finish, show clear. Good. Drop your striker and reholster. Range is safe. 6.47. Nice time.
Alright, this stage is pretty straightforward. You're standing facing uprange, loaded gun in the holster. At the buzzer, you turn, draw, fire 1 shot at the metal target, and after you hit it, it falls and yanks these 2 support blocks out from underneath these 2 swingers, and these targets begin moving. So I think I shot this stage in a little over 6 seconds, and basically what I did was I turned, draw, fired at the metal target. When I hit it, I immediately moved the gun, and I'm sort of ambushing the target, because there's a delay in when the plate drops and the cords yank out from underneath, and then this target starts moving. So I engaged the left target, and ambushing it, I was able to nail two shots in the A zone, and they were, I don't know, this far apart from one another. I did really, really well. And then I screwed up when I went back over. I started chasing the target. I fired 1 shot, and then I started moving the gun, fired another shot, and then I waited for it to finish its arc and then come back out. I fired another shot and chased it again. So I wound up firing 4 shots at that target, and I only hit it once. If I were going to do it all over again, I would do the same thing as far as hitting the metal target and then getting right on the other one and ambushing it. However, I would have slowed up just a second and waited for that target to disappear and then come back out and ambushed it. And I think I would have had better placed shots. My time probably would have been a bit shorter had I done that, but I just think that was the way to go. Ambushing the targets really seemed to work out better for me. So hit the steel, 2 A's on the left target, and I believe it was a C and a Mike, a C and a miss on the far right target. So I didn't do so great on that stage due to just that 1 target.
Are you ready? Mm-hmm. Stand by. I
believe the name of this stage was Holes in the Wall, and it was pretty interesting. Basically, you've got a wall in front of you with high and low ports. So high port, variety of targets. Low port, variety of targets. High port, Texas Star. Low port, variety of steel. High port, some more cardboard. And when I looked at the stage originally, I was kind of worried because I was unable to get another spare magazine for the match. When I went to purchase one at the local gun shop, they were completely out, and I knew going into it with 4 magazines, I was kind of pushing it. And this stage had me worried because I thought I was going to run out of magazines. And several other shooters ran out of bullets before they were finished. So I was kind of concerned, but I formulated a game plan. When the buzzer went off, I was going to go far left and engage all the targets left to right. So on the far left port, what I should have done was fired 1 round at the center steel target. The reason being, there was another steel target directly behind it. So when you hit that steel target, there's a delay. It leans back. There's like a metal pin that falls down, and then this target falls forward, making the target behind it visible. In which case, that one falls back. And I started engaging left to right. So I fired 1 or 2 shots. I had good clean hits. I missed the third one, and then I kept going. And I hit the other 2. And then when it came time to shoot those 2 targets that were staggered front to back, I hit the first one, and then I had to stand there and wait for it to drop so that I can engage the second one. I should have shot that one first, and then engaged the other targets as that one teetered and fell, making the last target visible. I could have shaved a little bit of time off. Moving over, I dumped the magazine, loaded a new one, crouched down, and fired at the cardboard targets. Then from there, I fired 1 extra round when I shouldn't have. It just didn't feel right. I felt the gun pull, and I knew that the shot was bad, so I fired another shot, and then got up and moved to the higher port with the Texas Star. And as a result, I had just a funky reload in there. I missed a few shots, but I did pretty well on that Texas Star nonetheless. I shot it in the right sequence so that it didn't go wild and crazy and just start spinning like mad. I was picking off the plates as to keep this thing somewhat balanced. So that worked out in my favor. Then we moved over to a low port, and I started engaging steel, and I lost count of how many rounds were in the magazine. I had to do a reload in the middle, and that kind of screwed me up and added more time. And then I reloaded and closed it out with the last cardboard targets. And all in all, I did fairly well. I think my time was 40-some seconds. A lot of the other shooters were doing it in 60-ish seconds. So I was really happy with my time. My reloads could have been better. Had I had 5 magazines, I think I would have done much better on that stage, because I could have reloaded in between each box and felt comfortable in having enough rounds to get through all of it. So decent stage, but definitely could have made some improvements here and there.
Ready? Stand by. It finished.
This stage was pretty interesting because I initially had one game plan, and then I changed it on the fly after seeing another shooter engage it differently. Now initially I was going to go far left, engage those 2 targets, then move forward around the barrels, engage 3 more targets, then sort of cut diagonally backwards to engage the 3 targets on the far right, and then move around the barrels, hit those 2 targets, then engage strong hand, weak hand targets on either side of the fence. However, during my walkthrough, I realized that I could see 2 of these targets from right from like 2 steps off the starting point. However, I didn't want to engage them there because I couldn't see the third target, and I would have had to run around the barrels and pick up that last target anyway. So I thought, well, why should I engage these targets from far away if I can hose them from up close? Well, as you saw in the video, I could actually see that last target if I leaned around the fence when I engaged those first 2, or the first 2 far to the left. So that's what I wound up doing. I took 1 step, fired 2 shots at the first target I could see, half step to see the other target, engaged that, moved far left, picked up those 2 targets, and then I could see down the fence line and pick up that third target at a distance. Now, you see me pull back away because I started losing my balance because I was really teetering on the edge of this beam that they had to mark out the firing line. You can step on it, you just can't step over it, and I started to lose my balance. So that's why I kind of pulled back and remounted. And then I just ran over and picked up the targets as I went. Now, as I was running back over, I had to do a reload, and I screwed up. With my M&P, if you jam the magazine in with authority, sometimes the slide moves forward and chambers around. Well, you can plan around that and use it to your advantage. However, when I did that, I had this strange reaction, and I racked the slide, and I spit a round out, through the ejection port, and I had 9 rounds in the magazine. And you could see I go to slide lock when I'm engaging the other 2 targets, and I had to reload and start all over again, which kind of threw me off. And I wound up firing 2 more shots because I rushed the first 2, and 1 seemed to drift left, so I just fired 2 more rounds in it and then moved, shot strong hand, weak hand, and finished out the stage. All in all, I did pretty well on that. I got all A's on the strong hand, weak hand targets. There was a mixture of A's and C's on the others. I think I may have had 2 C's overall. I did pretty well with that stage, and it was definitely to my advantage to change up the game plan as I went, because my original plan would have meant taking much longer to shoot that stage than it really did. So kudos to the guy that shot it ahead of me, because he showed me the better way to do it.
Are you ready? Ready. Stand by. If finished, unload, show clear. If clear, hammer down, holster.
This stage was leaving me really indecisive. I didn't know in which order I wanted to engage the targets, because there were just so many of them that you could see from the start line that I was having some difficulty planning out how I wanted to take 10 shots and then reload. And there was just that target in the back that was just calling my name, and I wanted to shoot it. However, it didn't make sense to engage it until I was right on top of it. So what I wound up doing was picking off the farther targets, moving, shooting 2 targets behind the barrel, picking up a target along a wall, running to the other side, reloading, picking up 2 more targets, and then another target down along the wall, and then just hustling to the fence line so that I could engage 3 targets that were sort of down towards the ground. And when I got to those targets, I didn't even bother aiming. I just stuck the gun out there and started yanking on the trigger. I still managed to score all A's there. And then that last target that I could see from anywhere on the field was right in front of me. It just made sense to pull the gun up and fire 2 shots at point-blank range and just kind of point shoot it. So I did really well with that stage. I think I may have managed 1 or 2, maybe 3 C's. The rest were A's, and I was just really happy with that stage overall. My time was pretty good. If anything, I could have moved a little faster in picking up some of the targets along the fence line. I seemed to take my time in aiming there. I think I could have shot a little bit faster, but all in all, I think it was a solid stage for me.
Are you ready?
Ready?
Stand by. Reload if necessary.
I'm still kicking myself for not engaging this stage the way I anticipated engaging it in the first place. And we were starting off facing across range, and at the buzzer, you turn and engage these 3 targets, one of which you need to engage from a crouch because it's down underneath no shoots. Now, what I was planning on doing was taking one big step backwards, turning and dropping down to a knee, engaging that center target, and then while kneeling, engaging the 2 targets on either side. Now, for whatever reason, I thought, well, you know what, I don't really want to engage those targets from kneeling because then I'll be shooting up at them. You know, the berm was plenty tall, but for whatever reason, I turned and I engaged those 2 targets while standing and then crouched and fired 2 more rounds. And I didn't do so hot on that stage. My overall time was okay, but my shots could have been much better, and I think I may have felt more comfortable and more stable from a kneeling position, and that's where I really think I should have shot it. If I had to do it all over again, I would definitely have fired all of those rounds from the kneeling position.
I've got a camera, but are you ready?
Ready?
Stand by. Hammer down. Holster. Range is safe.
Well, this was the last stage of the day, and as you can see, or as you saw, when I engaged that first target, for whatever reason, my wrist was cocked, and I couldn't find the sight. I had to like sort of rotate the gun in my hand to find the sights to take the shot. As a result, my first shot was a miss, and I didn't make it up. I should have fired a 3rd round just to be sure, but I didn't because I was more concerned with time. And then I kind of took off running. I did well on every other target. That was the only one that I missed. And I think my second shot may have been a C or something like that. So all in all, that was the killer part of the stage. Everything else I did pretty well. And I had a lot of fun sort of jumping up on that fence and reaching around and firing 2 rounds and then running to the other side and doing the opposite thing with weak hand only. And it was a fun stage, but again, that not having the gun cocked in my hand and not being able to find the sight is what killed me there. I should have taken a little bit more time to mount the gun and press out and not worried so much about shooting the stage quickly. Well, that's going to wrap up the featured discussion topic of the episode, and I had a lot of fun shooting that USPSA match. It's kind of a shame that we're at the end of the season and I got started with it so late, but I think there's a couple more matches this month, no more at that club, and then that's pretty much it until spring rolls around. My goal at this point is to get within the top 50% of shooters in production class, and you know, I think I may have done it with this particular match. I have to wait a few days until the scores are posted to find out for sure, but I felt really good about that match, and I didn't have that stumble in the beginning like I do sometimes, where I feel like I'm shooting cold and then it takes a stage to warm up. You know, I hit the ground running and I started shooting really well from the start. I stumbled a little bit toward the end, but all in all, I think I did pretty well, and I think I shot considerably faster than my last match, so I'm really interested to see where I fall in terms of score. So with all that said, I want to thank you for watching this episode of Shooting the Breeze podcast, the formal gun podcast of WaltNPA.com. I really appreciate all the support that I've gotten throughout these 14 episodes, and hopefully I'll just continue to get as much support as I go and do more and more episodes. If you'd like to reach out and contact me, you can do so via email at walt@waltnpa.com. You can reach me on Facebook and Google Plus under the username Walt White. I'm also on Twitter at WaltW. So there's a variety of ways to contact me if you have any questions or about something in the show or something you would like to see added to the show. But again, I want to thank you for watching, and until next time, I will catch you later.